Each week, we take a moment, sit down, and talk about things going on at the road in what we call the Road Detour.
Well, welcome to the Road Detour, and here with Matthew, we're going to talk about some fun stuff, and then talk about what's coming this week in worship. So,
yeah. Hey, who do you think is going to win this week in the Super Bowl?
Who do I want to win? Who do I think is going to win? Yeah, I listen to a lot of sports radio, and actually, what I heard this morning going to the gym was that Kansas City's not favored. That San Francisco's 2-point favorite. That's crazy to me because I feel like San Francisco.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Kansas City would win, but I like Brock Purdy. And
who?
Brock Purdy. I said Purdy.
Purdy.
Brock Purdy, and I'd like to see him do well. I'd like to see him win. I think. Yeah. It'd be interesting. Yeah, so we're having some people over. You guys having some people over, right?
We do. We have. Yeah. So I'm excited.
By the way, it's a great opportunity to invite your friends and your neighbors over with some church people. Use it as an outreach opportunity. It's a great opportunity.
Any leftovers that you have that's good, bring them back to church on Monday, right? And let us taste it to see if we'll do a contest to see.
Oh, that would have been a great contest.
What?
To have run is the best Super Bowl food. Yeah. Do it in the lobby on Super Bowl Sunday.
Well, how about this? What do you think is the best Super Bowl food? Why don't you put it in the comments below? You have comments, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, put it in the comments.
So are you doing anything special food-wise?
So just to be real, anytime we do anything as a family, our go-to is like Mexican food. It's easy. Our kids eat it. And so we'll do like easy tacos for my family, for the kids and stuff. But really, for the adults, we'll have like a 7-layer dip. That's really kind of our go-to.
I'm gonna do some. I've done wings before, deep fried them. I actually came up with found a recipe on your smoker where they actually get crispy, and it's using baking. Is it baking powder, baking soda? It's one of the two. I'd have to go look at the recipe.
I've seen the baking powder or soda on them.
And then you smoke them low for about 45 minutes, and then you crank that heat up and crisp that skin. So I'm going to do some smoked wings. I always get some good hot dogs. I love a smoked hot dog, man. An all meat beef. High-end hot dog, so, not your 88 cents a pack hot dogs.
No, I don't mind it. I don't mind the 88 cents a pack. What? Don't give me a bowl weenie. Don't do that. No. I can't be eating a boiled hot dog.
Chicken tongues. You know they had a chicken plant where I used to pastor, and they made the hot dogs. And listen, you don't know how they made them hot dogs.
No, I don't want to know because I do love hot dogs. I will say this is that being from the country in North Carolina, we were around a lot of farmers, and so we experienced a lot of random type of foods that as a kid that a lot of people don't eat today.
Right.
Or have the stomach for.
Yeah.
So,
hey, that liver mush.
Liver mush.
Yeah, I saw a different version of that actually come across my social media.
Liver pudding?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not as good.
Yeah, it was, but they were talking about, basically throwing everything in a pot, cooking it down. Yeah.
It's similar. The difference is liver mush actually has more cornmeal in it. So if you like, when I eat cornbread, right, if you put it in a black skillet, the bottom layer in that black skillet ends up being crispy, right? And so liver mush ends up tasting, so like the edges of the liver mush ends up tasting like the outer edge of, cornbread that's out of a skillet. So I think it's incredible.
I want to know, if you're not in Matthew's family, if you've ever heard of, first of all, liver mush or liver pudding.
Yeah.
And if you ever tried it, he actually brought me some. It's not bad. It's not nearly as bad as it sounds. Kind of tasted like sausage to me.
Well, so that's kind of what it is. In some ways, you basically have all this leftover. Again, I grew up poor, right? And so, like, you just did what you had to do to get by. And
we didn't throw stuff away.
Right, exactly. And so you take all these leftovers and you put them together with basically, the reason you think it tastes like sausage, like the sausage spices.
Yeah.
And add cornmeal to it, right? And that's what comes out with this patty. It actually comes out like something that when you see like Spam, and then you would slice it like Spam, and then you would fry it in a pan or whatever.
So we had head cheese, man.
I actually do like head cheese.
I do not want no head cheese. I watched my grandma put a hog head in a pot and boil that thing, and it bouncing around in that pot and picking the meat off of it. I do not want no sauce, no head cheese.
Sauce is good. Have you ever had brains and eggs?
No. I have people who
You're not
eat them.
poor. You're not from the country. Don't ever
the
say you're a
first church
country
I
boy.
pastored, they eat squirrel brains and eggs.
Yeah, that's good.
Squirrel brain. No.
What? You not? Don't
I'd
ever
be
say
ending
you're
up with
from
something
the
like
country
chronic
again.
wasting disease or something.
Somebody actually asked me the other day if I wanted to go squirrel and rabbit hunting, and I was like, man, honestly, it's been 30 years since I've done anything like that. So I don't even know. In my head, I still love all that stuff, but I don't know if I still would love it.
Yeah.
If I actually ate it today.
So I went rabbit hunting in Heavener. And the guy said, "You want to go rabbit hunting with us?" And I'm like, "Sure." We shot rabbits growing up all the time. And he puts me in a Jeep, and it had one of those leveling things on it. And we run out of road. Mm-hmm. And there was this creek, and we went down that creek, and he said, "It won't turn over as long as that thing stays on this side of that bar." And we didn't, but it felt like we was. We got up there, we let the dogs out. They jump a rabbit. That rabbit runs by me, and boom! Everybody just stopped and looked at me. I was like, "We're rabbit hunting." The guy put his arm around me. He said, "Come over here." He said, "We don't shoot the rabbit." He said, "We let the dogs run the rabbit, and then the second time the rabbit comes around, we shoot it. But we do not shoot the rabbit as soon as we see the rabbit." I'm like, okay, man. My hair just enjoying it.
But did you eat it?
With the guys. I didn't. They did. I've eaten rabbit before, but
you eat like dove, other things.
Yeah, dove.
Why wouldn't you eat rabbit?
I would. I have before. We didn't. I didn't eat
We'll
those
see.
rabbits.
I'll bring you some.
Yeah, rabbit's not bad.
So,
where are we going with this, right?
yeah. Hey,
welcome to Wild Beast Feast 101.
So we initially started talking about the Super Bowl, and we got off on
liver mush,
right, on all kind of
fowls.
stuff. We love to chase rabbits, pun intended, right? But so you think who's going to win?
I'd like to see 49ers win.
Yeah.
For one
me
reason,
too.
they're the underdog. Kansas City's won multiple times. Mahomes is really good. Purdy's just getting started.
No, that's what I guess I'm pulling for the 49ers as well. I feel torn because I do have a lot of ties back to Missouri, and Kansas City Chiefs have supported a lot of the things and interests that I'm a part of, and so I want to pull for them, but they're kind of like this generation's Alabama, right? In the sense that they've won so much, so recent. People just don't like them, and I'm finding myself in that category, and I hate that I am. Actually,
What do you think about the Kelsey Taylor Swift thing?
Well, I mean,
I'm glad I asked you that rather than you asking
so
me.
I will say this is
All the Swifties out there listening, brother.
yeah, I personally don't listen to Taylor Swift. My girls like some of Taylor Swift's songs, and so I don't know enough to talk about Taylor Swift. I just
Who cares, right? Let them go do their thing.
So I watched a thing the other day that said like she's actually been shown like a minute and a half total on like at these different games and has already generated over like 35, 40
That's the
million
best thing that ever
dollars.
happened to the NFL.
So it was whether it was planned or unplanned, right? I don't care. It's been good for the NFL.
She brings an innocence to the game because she didn't know anything about it, man.
I will say I don't love the NFL. I'm much more a college football fan. So I really don't start watching the NFL till like the AFC NFC championship game, and then I start watching.
Well, let's move on.
Yeah.
Man, we have gone all over the place with that. So you're preaching this Sunday, and you're preaching on after I say I do.
Yeah, you know what? One of the things, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more about mine and Allison's story. When Allison and I got married, how about this? This may be similar to you and Steph. When Allison and I got married, I was our pastor.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So guess who did our premarital counseling?
Yeah. You get that. Yeah.
Our pastor, which was me.
Yeah.
And so here's what that translated for us is that I was an idiot. Like I just didn't know how to walk us through.
It's bad when the idiot's doing the counseling, right?
No doubt.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how to, I was young in my life, still feel young at 45. Like I just didn't know how to best help us. I knew the things to talk with couples about, but I didn't necessarily know what to say to Allison. There were moments I felt like, am I telling you what I just want you to hear? Or am I being honest about what it is that we need to kind of walk through and be upfront about? We had talked about everything like from the beginning. And that was something that helped us is that she lived in Oklahoma at the time. I lived in Nashville and I didn't know if I would really ever see her. And so my philosophy was, if this doesn't work out, I'll never meet her because I'm never going to go be in Oklahoma. So we talked about a lot from the beginning, which helped us. We were on the same page with a lot of things. But as far as actually having premarital counseling, we didn't have that. Yeah. And it put us back.
So, and I never thought about this because we didn't have official premarital counseling, but Steph and I both saw a counselor because of me coming out of the grief process and confusion and some of the questions I had for her and wanting to make sure. So she saw a counselor, and I had seen a counselor before I even met Steph and saw a counselor afterwards. But I think that helped us some too. Yeah. And it never even crossed my mind till you brought that up, how we approach that.
No, that's really good. And we didn't have that. We didn't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I realized and saw the benefit of counseling in my personal life. And I had gone to counseling in my life, but not like, it was more like helping me with my past junk, not necessarily how to best prepare for what's to come.
So I'm going to say something. My first wife and I didn't, right? I was in seminary. We met, seminary, get married.
Didn't what?
Didn't go do any counseling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then we ended up at a counselor. And because we were not prepared for the stress, difficulty, 3 kids, all that stuff that come with it. And so we did. We ended up, we didn't do it on the front end.
Yeah.
But we did it. Just did it after we got married and were ready to hurt each other.
Yeah.
And needed a solution, and we ended up in a counselor's office.
I hate that there's such a negative stigma when it comes to counseling. I really think everybody should always be in some form of counseling, whether it be with, it doesn't have to be a license.
Call it a coach.
Right, whatever it is. I just think we all need to consistently have someone that we give the opportunity to speak into our life. I'm going to talk about that a little bit on Sunday.
Right.
But we need to have intentional people that we give full access to our life outside of even our spouse.
Right.
And so that means we have to do a lot of work in who we allow to have that kind of access. But, I think for Alice and I both, over time, I've gone to counseling since we've been married. I've been at churches that said, hey, you need counseling, and I've gone to counseling that way. We've been to counseling. And truly, the times that we've been that intentional to say, hey, let's figure out why we are where we are, what's going on. And when we've been, I'll say that vulnerable with one another to say, I need some bigger help, has been the sweetest times in our marriage.
Yeah. Well, humility, submission, all those things work for great relationships. And we're all naturally the opposite of that, And I think you and I are a lot alike in a lot of ways. But one of the things where I as a young man, I thought I had all the answers.
Yeah.
And so I didn't need anybody to help me. And that's probably true for a lot of people who are reluctant. They think they already know what they need. And I didn't.
Yeah.
Not by a long shot, I didn't. Hey, you want to talk about the spiritually mismatch?
Yeah, so this has been interesting. You talked about it. Was Sunday the first time we talked about it? Mm-hmm. My weeks and days run together, so I don't know when it is. But you've said something about spiritual mismatch. And what I have found since you said that, I've had at least 10 conversations about people saying to me, hey, I feel like I'm spiritually, I'm married, I love my spouse, but we are spiritually What do we do?
Okay, so hey, this is just, we didn't rehearse this.
No.
So most people are sexually mismatched. Would you agree?
Tell me more.
Well, that one desires high, one desires low. We're never at the same place. We never.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. So marriage is about mismatch. Once you're in, you don't go, well, dadgum, physically we're a mismatch, or emotionally we're a mismatch, or our love languages are a mismatch.
Yeah.
Mismatch is not an excuse to end a relationship.
So time out.
Yeah.
When you're talking about, think 5 love languages, right? Mm-hmm. So I am physical touch and words of affirmation. Allison is not either one of those, right? She's
You're
quality
a mismatch.
time. Right. Exactly. That's a great point. I like it. Yeah.
So marriage is about a mismatch. It's that old saying, if both of you are exactly alike, one of you's not needed.
Wow.
But
wow. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Is that opposites attract, but then after you marry, they repel. Is that what attracts, if you like the party animal, if you're the quiet person and you like the party animal, you think they'll bring some fun and joy to my life, until all they ever want to do is party and not pay the bills. And you're like, you never grew up.
Yeah.
And so marriage is the process of learning to deal with the mismatch. So if one believer is more spiritually mature than the other believer, that's not an excuse. The mismatch matters most before you make the decision to marry. Right? So, because once you're married, you're in.
Yeah.
So if you can have that conversation as much as you can about whatever it is, that conversation of this is what my spiritual journey looks like and this is where I believe God's taking me, where is he taking you?
Yeah.
And then you make the decisions on the front end. If the mismatch is so far apart, I mean, and again, we're just being real. If you're sitting there and you're single and you're talking about your future together and you're super serious, and one person says, "I never want to have sex my whole life,"
Yeah.
and the other one's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, you get to make a decision. You're a free person at that point and go, is this
Yeah.
how I want to spend the rest of my life or not?"
Yeah.
Because we're too far apart on the mismatch, right?
Yeah.
Or if it's whatever area it's in, whether it's wealth and it's a mismatch, one was rich, one was poor.
Well, you can be coming from different backgrounds.
Cultural backgrounds.
is from a wealth, but I do think that as you're thinking about talking about that, thinking of it from the perspective of the risk and that you're willing to take as it relates to money can be a big difference. Because I've always been more entrepreneurial in nature, and so I don't mind risking money. Allison has been very conservative, and so I'm willing to go bet the farm on something that may make sense to me, may not to her, and so all of a sudden we can find ourselves
on opposite paths, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And look, as big as all these other things are, that can be big enough in a marriage that people go, "I can't live with you."
Right.
Our position would be, because this is where this is going, is what do you do when you're in a mismatch?
Yeah.
Well, you're in. From a biblical perspective, you're in. And part of growing up and being mature and growing even
Yeah.
in Jesus is learning to deal with the mismatch.
Yeah, you said it on Sunday. I've actually heard. I think I told you this. I think it was Paul Tripp who initially said, "It was him."
Who you're married is God's will. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to know who God has for your life? Look on your marriage certificate, right? So it's
God's will.
That's God's will, because that's what it is at that time. And so I think that's what's. I think people understand the concept. I think there's big picture concepts that people get fully. It's really about, I get that this is God's will, but what do I do now?
How do I do it?
How do I do this? How do I get on the same page? And we've talked before, it's, a lot of compromise and things like that. But how do we compromise what we feel like is calling?
Right. Yeah. See, you're into, again, those are on the front end. And some of the places that we have seen our family struggle is a couple is 10 years into marriage and one of them says, "Now I'm called." And the other one goes,
Yeah.
"But I didn't marry a pastor
Right.
or
Oh,
minister or missionary." And that's tough. That's really tough.
Again, you guys know I'm from North Carolina. I know of at least 4 pastors in North Carolina right now who's pastoring that they were married. They felt a later call to life. They went into the ministry and their wife straight up left them because they did not want to be a part of a pastor's lifestyle.
Yeah, right.
And I remember having conversations about this with my parents because I'm torn in this, right? God called, and yet at the same time, we also would agree to believe that once we're married, we're now one, and if your wife isn't called, then you're not called.
No, right.
If I say God wants me to do this and my wife says no, then the answer is no. Right?
Man, that's tough. I mean, I would look for the compromise point. What does this look like if everybody gives something? This is. I mean, I'm going to go back to the last week's message before I say I do. This is why this stuff's so important on the front end, brother.
Yes.
Is that we're sitting here and we kind of do this for a living and we're going, what do you do? You do it before you get to that point. Now, I know God doesn't always work that way. Is that sometimes the call doesn't come up to after that. But at that point, you got to believe if God calls somebody who's been married 10 years, that call probably would go both ways. Somebody may not like it, but in the grace of God, that it would be extended to them.
Yeah. Well, let me say this too. Right, we had someone in our office not too long ago that was talking to us about their call, and they found themselves in one area that they loved, but they felt called to preach the gospel, right? That was the
pressure.
conversation,
A
right?
pressure.
And so helping, and this goes back again, having the right people in your life to say, hey, let's help you discern that call, not just assume because you hear preach the gospel, you need to go now be a senior pastor at a local church. Let's figure out how you can preach the gospel in the area that you find yourself and how that lines up with your family.
Right.
And so I think yes to the conversations. I mean, there's so many conversations that we need to have before we get married. And unfortunately, I think we normally just have, I'll say sexual blinders on in the sense of like we're solely guys solely focused on some physical things that we forget some of the bigger conversations and questions that we need to be walking through as a couple.
That, I used to tell people when I did premarital counseling is, look, the physical aspect of your relationship will be minuscule in relation to everything else in your relationship, time-wise. And so, hey, you want that part to be good, but you still got to live with somebody a whole lot of time and share life with them. And so you want to make sure those things are possible.
Man, and honestly, to kind of wrap up our time, this leads us into this week.
It does.
We're talking about several things.
How do we do it?
Yeah, how do we do that? We're talking about really two specific mindsets that if we will get these concepts, it will radically change I'll say the spiritual environment culture of our home, but also there's the third point, which is really about Jesus at this point, what Jesus can do among us if we're willing. I think, to me, I'm really excited about this. I think this is maybe because I'm older and I'm more experienced with my marriage now, 15 years in, I fully believe this is the best marriage message I've ever preached.
Well, and I will tell them what I told you because I've seen the message, is that I have never really seen someone state the principles the way you stated them about who we are and why marriage is a struggle.
Yeah.
And I do, man, don't miss it. Plan to be there. Bring somebody with you. I want to say one other thing because it dawned on me. We're having this long conversation because you and I are like that. We talk a lot to each other. If you've got something you'd like to see us address on the road detour, message. Don't just drop it in the comments. Send a message, and we'll put it on the agenda and see if we can have some conversation about it that would be helpful.
Yeah,
and we'd enjoy that. That would be good for us.
I love
to hear where you're at.
I love kicking this stuff around. Look, we know you guys want practical tips and advice on how to live out the gospel in your life. Here's the reality. We need practical tips and advice. So just being able to have a conversation, it really is iron sharpening iron. We're just getting to walk through stuff sometimes for the first time that we've ever talked about it, like today. But not only is it, I do hope it's beneficial for you all, but it's always so beneficial for me to get to sit down and just talk practically with you about how to live out the gospel in my life. So I really appreciate these times. Yeah.
I love the detour, but I love it's kind of the spirit and atmosphere of our staff and our offices that we get to deal with stuff and help each other. And
this is good. Hey, you know what? One thing to remember, I said it on Sunday, I'll say it again. We are all a work in process. None of us have arrived in how we do marriage. And wherever you are, just remind yourself, remember to be gracious. God is not done with you. God is not done with your marriage. And truly, I believe the gospel declares the best is yet to come.
I would agree. Love you guys.
See you Sunday.